Hello everybody, and welcome to The Last Plague Blight. This is an open-world survival crafting game with a very heavy emphasis on realism and immersion, as the developers describe it. And what you will come to learn about that phrase is what it really means is that this game is extremely grindy. The amount of resource gathering that you need to do, the amount of preparation you need to do to survive, is pretty realistic. I mean, for example, if you wanted to make a single stone floor like you can see right here in my house, it would take, about 60 or so of those large rocks to build. So in this game, you need to pick up 60 large rocks in order to craft this floor on the ground. And each rock is very large and heavy, so you can't transport that many at a time, so you need to build a wheelbarrow in order to transport those rocks around, etc. So that is, I guess, a very quick and general overview of what it's like to build a house in this game. I've played for 20 hours, and this little tiny 2x3 structure is what I have to show for it. Once you play this game, you'll realize building something like this is no easy feat, as it would be in real life. If you want to have wooden floors and nice mud walls like this and all of that, it would take a lot of effort and a lot of time in real life, and so that's how it is treated in this game as well. So a few things about this game overall. First, I want to say thank you to the developers for providing me an early access code so I can show you guys what is up with this game and give you guys my first impressions. The Last Plague Blight is a procedurally generated open world. So if we take a look at my map here, you can see this is what my world looks like. It gives you a general idea of where swamps and forests and where rocks, where ores can potentially spawn are. Every single time you start a game in this, the map will be completely different. So none of your guys' maps will look like mine. All the towns will be a different name. All of the mountains and forests and town locations will be completely different. So that is definitely a plus in my book. It gives it a lot of replayability in terms of starting fresh and building up from the start. And the other thing that sets this game apart from every other open world survival crafting game is this little green gas that you can see over here. This is the Blight. And so every time you sleep, every time a new day passes in this game, the Blight will continue to enlarge and spread across the world. It's getting pretty dangerously close to my base, as you can see here. There is a way that you can take care of this a little bit later on in the game, which is something I'll talk about a little bit further on, but just keep in mind that there is a way to kind of contend with the Blight. The other thing that the Blight does is, as you can see this little rabbit over here, every animal and plant alive in your open world will slowly start to gain a Blight infection through the course of the game. So if you take a look at this meat that I've cooked here, you can see it is 19% contaminated. Every time you eat a piece of food or drink some water in this game that is contaminated, or eat a plant that you picked, your Blight meter here will also start to rise. So I have a pretty high Blight meter currently, and at this level of Blight, my hunger worsens 72% faster, thirst worsens 72%, and my stamina is 33% slower. So you definitely want to try and avoid increasing your Blight meter as much as possible, but that's pretty much impossible to completely avoid because you have to eat in order to survive, and pretty much every single animal and plant in this game will slowly get more and more infected as you play through, so it becomes more and more difficult to survive the further on you get into the game. So beyond that system, of course, the gathering in this game is a huge part of it. So if we take a look at just chopping down a tree, for example, chopping down a singular little tree in this game is no easy task. Take a look here. This is a pretty sharp and well-maintained axe, and this is the speed at which it chops down this large tree here. And you're going to have to cut down countless trees in this game, so a lot of slow wood chopping. But that's part of the immersion. Every single action that you take is going to make you more tired, it's going to make your thirst and your hunger decrease, and you need to continually manage those bars and manage these systems in order to survive and thrive. And that slow resource gathering applies to pretty much everything in the game. So from having to find all of the things, there's an interesting thing you can do in this game where you can actually see all of the items available on the ground if you press the Alt key, so you can get a nice view of everything that's around you. But you're eventually going to pick up all of the resources around your base, and you're going to have to venture off farther and farther away to find simple things like large sticks and large stones. You're going to use those up around your base very quickly, and you're going to have to be running pretty far across the map to find simple little resources like that. So in terms of the grind, it's not just the speed at which you gather the materials, but it is the scarcity of things, especially later on in the game, because things like twigs and berry bushes and all that, they don't respawn in this game from what I can tell. And if they do respawn, it is extremely slow, because I played about 20 hours and nothing has yet respawned. So scarcity and the amount of time it takes to gather things is very realistic and very time consuming. So that is definitely something to keep in mind. So gear progression in this game is also pretty interesting. You drop into the world with nothing but a simple hatchet in your hand as well as a knife, and you're pretty much just thrown to the wolves, so to speak, literally and figuratively. You need to build your way up from having to craft things out of mud and then craft things into clay, and then you can start working on basic metallurgy as well. So there is that typical progression system that you'll find in a lot of games. Again, the differentiating factor is how immersive and realistic all the systems are. It will be a significant grind to make your way all the way through the mud age into the clay age and then onward from there. So another interesting system in this game is that the tools that you craft actually rust and decay over time. So if we take a look at my inventory here, you can see that the steel pickaxe that I have here is 8% rusted. It has 10 durability on it. So every time your steel tools get wet in the rain or in a lake, it will start to rust when it dries off. So my knife here is 38% rusted, so it is very, very rusty and not very good condition in terms of its sharpness. You can work around this a little bit with things like the grinding wheel to repair your tools. When you do repair a tool, it will restore its sharpness or its condition stat at the cost of some of its total durability. So you can only sharpen your tools a certain number of times before they become permanently unusable. Another interesting thing that you can do is, there is of course the crafting and smelting system in this game with a bunch of different crafting benches here. You can actually break down your old tool, so if you have a tool that's very low durability, rusty, not very powerful, you can actually deconstruct that into pieces of metal and use that to forge brand new ones. So I do believe when you break down a tool, you lose about one piece of its material. So if you break down an axe blade, for example, it gives you 5 chunks, but in order to forge a new axe, it will take 6 chunks. So there is a little bit of loss in that process, but that is something to keep in mind. You can effectively remake your tools if they get too rusty or too damaged. Another very important system in this game is cooking, of course. Cooking is the primary way that you will balance your meters. You'll need a cooking surface to stick in your campfire, and various cooking surfaces have various sort of maximum quantities, so the larger clay pot can hold much more liquid than the clay bowl, but a lot of the time you're going to want to use the clay bowl, the smaller option, so you can make smaller quantities of potent things like the Blight healing potion or the HP healing potion. In order to start up a campfire, you're going to need, of course, some tinder and some kindling to get your fire started. So in this game, every large item can pretty much be broken down into smaller ones, so we can break a stick into twigs and we can use that for our kindling, and then pine leaves as our kindling. If you just rub 2 sticks together, there's only a percentage chance that you're going to start a fire, but if you actually use the full-blown piece of flint and you have a steel tool in your inventory, you can actually get a 100% chance to start your fire. And once you have your fire lit, or even beforehand, you can get some more firewood on there, make sure your fire lasts a little bit longer. But the primary thing you're going to be cooking in this game are the Blight healing potion, which effectively poisons your character and makes you lose HP over time, but also heals your Blight meter. And the healing potion, which uses chamomile flowers, it's chamomile tea is what it's called, and that will slowly regenerate your HP over time, but decrease your energy meter, so you'll get more and more tired thanks to that chamomile tea. So You need to balance your tiredness and your HP with the chamomile tea, and your blight and your HP with the blight healing potion. So there's a lot of meter balancing to take care of just with those 2 potions. And then of course you need to consume cooked meat and other cooked foods to increase your hunger and manage your thirst as well. And typically eating meat will increase your blight meter, depending on how infected the animal that you consume was. So the meter balancing is definitely interesting. You can store your potions inside of glass bottles or water skins. That way you can sort of carry around a pre-cooked version of that and use your chosen healing from one of those containers whenever you need it. And, of course, the more you heal, the more tired you'll become, and you'll have to balance your tiredness by sleeping. And when you sleep, that rapidly decreases your hunger and thirst. So, there's a ton of meter balancing in this game, and, I found it pretty interesting and engaging. I mentioned this glass bottle that I found as well. This actually was something that I found during an exploration session, so you're definitely going to want to sort of venture around your map. I actually haven't done a massive amount of exploration. I kind of just explored the top half over here, but there's so much space to still explore. And you can come across things like abandoned houses, and inside an abandoned house that I found was this covered glass bottle. I'm pretty sure you cannot craft these, you can only find them. But you can craft the water skins to store your potions. So exploration, again, is definitely important to find the scarce resources that you need. You're going to have to find those chamomile flowers to make your healing potions. You're going to have to find the red mushrooms, the poisoned red mushrooms that you can use to heal your blight. But those do become more and more scarce, and they do not respawn, from what I can tell. That's kind of the main sort of limiting factor about the cooking system, is that it's kind of difficult the further on you get into the game. The more your plague is going to be increasing because animals are just extremely, extremely blighted, and you're going to need a ton of red mushrooms. There is also a basic farming system in this game, so you can grow some of the things like the garlic and the ginseng, the dandelions, the chamomile that you need for teas, and you can grow the red mushrooms for the blight healing potion. But the mushrooms need to be pretty much under the cover of a shader, so you will actually have to build that structure to grow the mushrooms in order to grow them more quickly. The thing about the farming, though, is that it is extremely, extremely slow. So this isn't a good example, but I do have some crops down here. You can see it's well fertilized, good sunlight, no blight, strong. It is a little overwatered, but in this state, this is pretty much as good as you can get your crops, and it will take a full week to grow. So every single day in this game is about 40 minutes to an hour from my experience. So, take that for what it is. I mean, it's going to take you probably 10 hours of gameplay in order to grow a single crop. So you're going to have to, make sure you get them fertilized. You can crush up bones to make fertilizer. Make sure you're watering them every day. But even if you take care of your crops like that, they will still take about a week to grow, which is an insane amount of time. And I think that's definitely one thing that can use a little bit of adjustment, is that the growth time on the crop seems a little outlandish to me. I mean, maybe I'm doing something wrong. I'm not exactly sure how to avoid making them damp, for example. I'm just watering them up to the max with my watering can here. You can see this isn't even fully watered and it's still considered damp. If you let it go for too long, it will become dry, and then it will grow even slower than it does when it's damp. So I think balancing the farming is definitely something that I would recommend to the developer. It seems a little too slow, and since resources are scarce and they don't respawn, in order to play this game for a very long time, I'm pretty much at the point where all of the mushrooms in my nearby forest over here are gone. I've gone pretty much halfway down into this forest looking for mushrooms to manage my blight meter. So I'm going to have to build, a shaded area to grow those mushrooms, but I'm assuming it's going to take, 6 hours of gameplay time in order to grow those mushrooms. So that's not really an option for me immediately. But yeah, that is my general take on this game. Just a quick little review for you guys about my experience. Again, I played for about 20 hours now at this point, 22 hours, and I really did enjoy my time with it. I think that the early game is probably the best part. Kind of starting out with nothing, having to scrape all your resources together, building your first little mud brick kiln that you can see I have my mud brick kiln still over here, upgrading into the clay brick, and then doing your first basic, copper mining and your copper firing in your crucible to make things like nails and basic tools. That is really fun, and I really, really did enjoy that. Having gotten to the point where I am now, where I kill a coyote or a wolf or a rabbit and it's like 60% infected, and just having to eat to survive is bringing my blight meter up to almost 50%. Your stamina decreases so quickly, so it's definitely tough to manage. I haven't quite cracked the code yet as far as what to do about staying on top of my blight meter with also having to eat these blighted creatures. It's definitely tough the further on you get into the game, so that's probably my one complaint. I definitely don't mind the grindiness. I love the grindy games. My only complaint, I think, at this point would be, of course, I think it needs a little bit more content. This is an early access game. We need another way to deal with the plague, the blight. So that's another aspect of this game that's, you're required to gather some fairly limited resources in order to burn back this plague. You can basically craft a burn pile that you can light on fire, and it gives you sort of like a small circular radius for every one of those that you craft. And every one of those burn piles takes quite a bit of material grinding in order to create. So I think later on in the development cycle, if you completely burn away the plague from around a town, for example, there could be some stuff in there to find. All of the towns are completely surrounded in blight, like you can see here, but the amount of resources it would take to just even make a straight path to one of the buildings in this town is just astronomical. I don't even know if I gathered up every single oleander leaf on my entire map, if that would be enough to liberate one single town at this point. So, as far as the content goes, more missions, a little bit more item progression I think would go a long way, and then another way to deal with the blight, because the burn piles, while cool and interesting, are just a little too resource intensive, I feel like. I don't really feel like farming a ton of oleander leaves is that much of an option, considering how slow crops grow in this game. If you wanted to make a massive oleander leaf farm to make those burn piles, it would be 10 hours of waiting for all of those to grow. So I think that's my main complaint, just a little bit more content, a little bit more of a way to deal with the blight on the map and inside of your system. I am running very low on mushrooms and resources, so it's becoming increasingly more difficult to manage simply because resources are so scarce at this point. But, I do find this game extremely immersive. I really, really did enjoy my time with it so far, and I definitely want to play more once more content is added to the game. There are tons of little moments that are just extremely immersive as far as the survival goes. The rain is coming down and you're chopping firewood because you want to go to sleep soon. You have to stick that firewood in your wheelbarrow and meticulously bring it on back to your base. Dry it out underneath the cover of your little shelter. Wait for the bear that's nearby to walk away so you can safely put your firewood in your campfire and fall asleep. Just little moments like that. The moment-to-moment survival is really nice in this game. It is also a multiplayer game, so I think the grind of the resources would be significantly cut down if you had multiple people playing with you. So if you're interested in not taking this challenge solo, but doing it with a friend, that is definitely an option, and can definitely cut back on some of the grindiness, in my opinion. But yeah, that is my experience with the last Plague Blight so far. Those were all of the systems that I've pretty much touched and experienced so far. I hope I gave you a pretty good overview of what this game has to offer. It is a very meticulous, very slow, and immersive, realistic survival crafting experience. And I would 100% recommend it if it sounds like something you would be interested in, because it is definitely unique and challenging in a very, very unique way. But yeah, thank you everybody so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this little overview of this brand new game, and I hope to see you all in the next one. Goodbye.